Here we go. All right, we're back. We are COMP305 in the fall 2019 semester at Centennial, and we're lesson 8, part 1. We're going to talk about 2D tile maps. So I'm using the new fandangled control room at YouTube. Let's see how it works. So where last we left off, we were using, we kind of were left with this. We had a bit of movement on our character, and we had a checkpoint as well. So when we kind of moved our guy, made a bit of sound. There we go. Right? He falls from the death plane. He falls down. He kind of reappears. All that kind of stuff. No matter where he goes, he's back. Camera kind of moves. And I'm just going to make the camera go to free aspect for now, just so that we can see what it looks like. There we go. So you can see here that he's jumping around or whatever, and that's what you have right now. Also, when he jumps, I can kind of jump in midair. Turn around, whether he's moving or not, that's no problem. So things we're left to do. One, this is a big task, right? Like doing what we did last time with actually fitting these tiles together and all that stuff, that's really kind of crappy, right? To be honest, right? And the reason for it is it takes a long time for you to V-snap everything together and to make it interesting. So wouldn't it be nicer if, and there is nicer, but wouldn't it be nicer if you could use a tile map to kind of draw everything on the screen nice? Wouldn't that be good? So that's what we're going to do today, part of it. The other part we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about enemies and how to set them up, how to set an enemy so it runs around and it can detect the edge of the platform and then switch around and move the other way. We're going to talk about that a little bit, as well as how to go up tiles that are ramps. How do you do that? How does that work? That has to be a little different in terms of collision and all that stuff as well. So a bunch of little things we got to talk about today, but we're going to start with tile maps. So last we left off, we had this tile map and it was pretty ugly. You can see when we zoom in here that there's like areas here that are white. It's nice if it was a white background, but most often you don't get that kind of thing. You usually get a black background or some other custom background. So let us set a couple things up. First, let's get rid of the tiles that are currently on the screen. So we'll get rid of all these. So goodbye tiles. And I still want the death plane. The death plane is still kind of an area below. One thing I recommend is making the death plane really large, so that way, in your level, you kind of make it the size of your level, one death plane. So that way it's like, pretty big. And then let us make this tile stuff happen. So one thing is, the first thing you do is you do this. You kind of go into your hierarchy and you right click. Let's do it together. And then you're going to go to 2D object tile map. Pretty simple. So what does it do? It creates a grid. So here's the grid. This grid is typically 32 by 32. All right, so 32 pixels or points by 32 points. That's what it does. When it grids it off for you, it allows us, if you can picture us drawing the grid the way we want, we can do that. Tile maps come in rectangular grids, hexagonal grids, which are really cool. So if you want to make some kind of space game, this is really cool. There's also isometric kind of grids, which are very cool for isometric maps. Awesome, actually. As well as isometric Z as Y, where you flip things. So there's different options. We're going to use the rectangular grid, which is very simple. But I'm really totally interested in the hexagonal grids are awesome. Alright, so you can see here that I've got my, I'm just going to take the gizmos off for now, but you can see that I got my my player, and he's going to kind of fall. The grid, if you notice, is physically here. You can't see the grid, but it's actually on screen. And on the grid, there's a tile map. So there's two different items. The grid itself, which is the container, and the tile map, which is kind of a layer or another sub-container inside of the grid. So those are two things. What we need to do is we need to have a tile palette. We want to create a tile palette. In order for us to do that, we need to have some textures, and we have them. So if you look at textures, and if you look at tiles, I've provided a couple of additional tiles. Now, let's start with the tile set from last time. So tile set last time was this one. It's already cut up, right, and everything else. And I want to use this default tiles as, we'll call it the tile map, the default tile map. So in order for us to do that, we're going to go Window, and we're going to go 2D, and then we're going to go Tile Palette. So under the Tile Palette, you're going to see it's a floating window. Okay, it's pretty simple. I'm going to put it kind of on our, let's put it right here next to us. So we're going to kind of use this for now. Now it takes up quite a bit of real estate, but don't worry about it. The tile palette would be here. Notice it says by default there's nothing there, right? So I've just parked it here. I'm going to create a new palette. Create a new palette. And let's name it for now, we'll call it like, you know, the main palette. You can call it whatever you like. Notice the grid, rectangular, hexagonal, isometric, or whatever. It'll match the grid that you define in your, if you want to or not. In your on the grid itself, we're going to use rectangular. So again, we're going to call this main. It's going to be a rectangle and create. And then it's going to ask you, okay, where do you want this thing? So I'm going to put it in a new place. I'm going to go to Assets. I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm just going to call this Tile Maps. Okay, Tile Maps. And then click Select Folder. Cool, so I've got this tile map. It's called tile map. It's I'm kind of on, it's the main tile map, and the active tile map is tile map, this one. Okay, let's rename this thing so it makes sense. We'll call this Foreground. Right? You can see that this now changed to Foreground. So the active tile map is the foreground, and then we have the main tile palette right here. This is the main tile palette. Cool. So now all you need to do is take this default tile set that we have and just drag and drop it into here. It's going to ask you, okay, where do you want to define your tiles for the tile palette? And again, I'm going to put them in the same spot. So I'm going to go kind of up one. I'm going to go to Tile Maps. Right? Under Tile Maps, if you want to be organized, I want to click New. And I'm going to call this main. So the main tile palette, if you will. Select folder. And now if you look at the hierarchy, you can see that, or in the assets, I have tile maps and I have main. I also have my main, it's the same name. But you can see inside the main folder, I have all the different tiles. And notice that each of them has a collider type. So you can put Sprite or Grid. Sprite is really interesting in that it tries to create a, the collider that matches the sprite, which is kind of interesting. Cuts up each of the tiles. If I go to Sprite Editor, you can see that I can go back to the Sprite Editor and modify the tiles if I want to, and it kind of connects to the Sprite Editor that we had before. So this has already been cut up, so you can see this. So as before. So this is cool. So here's my little tile palette. Take a look. Right? Kind of cool, wouldn't you say? Well, now I can like physically take these from here. I can select this little paintbrush. I can select the tile, and then I can literally paint my oh man, what the heck? What happened? Right? My tile is way bigger than my grid. Well, remember what we said. The grid by default is 32 by 32 points. These things are 64 by 64, remember? So we have a discrepancy. Couple things to do. One, the grid can be made larger by multiplying the scale by 2. However, you make the grid scale by 2, all the sub containers also increase in size potentially. So we want to just change the foreground scale. So if you go to foreground scale, scale for the foreground also has a number. We can make the foreground scale 2. And if you notice, now it's twice as big. But, oh man, it didn't really do anything for us. In fact, it made our tile massive, even bigger than before. Look, if I go back to 1, it's smaller, but it fits. So this is the effect of foreground tile map compared to the grid. If I go back to the grid and change this to 2, see? Twice as big. There's also another control we can use, cell size. Cell size right now is 1. We can change that to 2. If we change that to 2, now we're good. So cell size and scale. Now that's on the grid. Let me undo that change one more time. So 1, 1, 1. And let's go back to my foreground. Notice we don't have a cell size option over here. We have a cell size for the entire grid, but we don't have a cell size for each of the tile maps. Okay, we have anchors, but nothing else. So let's go back to that one and change the 2, like I said. Once you do, you have these the same size, and if I want to draw, I can draw one tile at a time and just drag. Right? Nice and easy. There's no V-snapping, none of that stuff, right? If you want to make some variations, you can kind of do a variation. If you want to add some, you know, ground underneath this one, you can do that too. You know, maybe those things, these grids mean something different, you know, as an example. So you can see that I can do this kind of stuff. Now this tile map is very simple, but let's just add some additional things here. Let's say I want to make another platform that starts over here somewhere, right? So we'll do this and we'll add some additional platforms on this side. By the way, if I want to grab more than one, or if I want to arrange these tiles, what I can do is I can move these tiles. So I can kind of say, oh, I want to move this tile. I want to edit. Now I take this tile map and I can move this tile where I want to. Let me just try that again. So again, I'm going to select this tile, I click move, and then I'm going to move this tile where I want. And why this is good is because I can do the same thing by rearranging stuff ahead of time, so I don't have to do this manually like I did it over here, right? Let me show you what else this does. So this is, again, select, this is move, this is the brush. This is paint a filled box with an active brush, so I can fill it. I can pick or marquee a selected brush. I can delete, or I can just fill an active brush, right? So I can do this kind of stuff. What I really want to do is I want to do one of these. I want to kind of paint these 2 items, and now I have 2. And now when I zoom out, I can literally paint things in 2s, right? So I can create my platform any way I like. Same thing goes with this. I could kind of move these ones. Let's say I want these 2 to be painted, so I can kind of select those 2. Oops, undo. I meant, let's not edit that one. I didn't want to edit here. Let's suppose that I want to select those 2. I can kind of simply select those 2. I've got those 2 now, and then just stamp those in there to make them more interesting. But you can see that I can create these little platforms fairly easy. Now here's the challenge. How about colliders? Like right now, if I run this thing just like this, then goodbye, right? I mean, he'll fall forever. So that's not really a solution. It doesn't give you a colliders right yet. But each tile map, in this case it's called foreground, notice there's like a big line that's drawn around it to kind of surround the entire level that I've got drawn out so far, this big grid. What you can do is you can add in a component called tile map collider. And what tile map collider will do is it'll use each of the tiles to generate colliders for each of them. But however, I did this, we're still going to have an issue. So he'll be there, but then movements, I mean, I can't move. Why? Because it's not grounded. So I've got to set those, and notice there's some issues here. He's not grounded, and one of the challenges that we're going to have is that, you know, we have to kind of set this foreground to a layer which is called ground. Okay? So that's kind of something we want to do. And if I was to do it now, this time, and just run it, we can now move. I can jump around. And if I don't make it, that's okay, because I can't see because of where I am, but that's okay. It's because we're being obscured here. Let me just make this maximized so we can see what it looks like. Yeah, so whoop, there we go. And there's a problem too. One of the problems we're having is what happens when, I mean, I can wall jump a bunch of times, right? If I want to. But what happens when what happens when I can jump really, really high if there's two tiles that are next to each other, like let's say a tile here and a tile here. What happens then? We have a really weird jumping thing. We have to fix this problem too. So example would be, let's suppose it's not like this, but rather, I'm just going to take this tile and map it over here, and maybe another one over here. And let's grab some other tiles here, paint them. So you have something like this instead. Okay, now this is going to present other issues. Let's talk about this for a second. Alright, so what happens when, oops, let's maximize this. What happens when we get to this? What happened there? How come this happened? And notice also I've got a bit of collision problems. But we knew this was going to happen because of his fat head. Right? I mean, his fat head is an issue, right? And we talked about this. Like, is this okay? You know, what would you think? Also, take a look. I mean, the tiles are not the greatest tiles. I mean, they've been sliced. But you know what? There is a bit of separation. We got some stuff going on with this tile set's not the greatest tile set, right? But the really good thing about this is that you can clearly see the delineation between one tile and the other, right? So again, this is a problem. So here, look over here. Here he's good, right? Right? He's good. But once I get over here, it's really, really big. Especially if I double jump. Okay, look. Same thing over here. Why is that happening? Anybody have an idea? How about Josh? Josh, why do you think this is happening?
Sorry?
So here we go. We have this guy here. Yep. Over here, he's jumping. But over here, what's going on? Why do you think that is?
Because it's double grounded?
That's right.
Colliders on each?
That's right. You're double grounded, right? You got a ground over here, and you get a ground over here.
Twice, so you jump exactly twice the height.
So what you're doing is you're getting twice the amount of force that you would normally get, if not more, because also look at this. He's got this one, and this one. So you could have almost 3 times the force here, because remember what he's doing, his collider is colliding with all these things, right? So this is a problem. So how do we limit this? How do we clamp this? We're going to clamp, right? Also, one thing to note is this. For physics, if we add force, what we're actually doing is I'm taking some kind of measurement of force, an energy. I got energy that I'm imparting onto an object, right? And I want to take that object and it's going to continue in its path, whatever it's doing. So what I want to do is I want to set limits to its speed. Speed for a rigid body is velocity. Velocity is a vector, and it has direction and magnitude, right? So we want to cap the velocity. Even if I'm next to a wall here, I never want it to go beyond a certain velocity on the upwards motion. In fact, we want to cap the velocity left and right too. Look, if I want to, I'm going to get faster and faster here. Look, he's just going to speed up because I'm adding force. This is no good, right? Look, I can kind of, right? I can kind of go as fast as I want here, and that's not going to be really that fun. So I need to do that first. Let's do the cap velocity thing first before I move on. So first thing is we did this grid, and we had a foreground, and this is a pretty crappy little tile map that we're making, and we're going to go to different tile settings and see if we can do something different. Right. So let's go to the scripts. So under scripts, we have our hero, our player controller script. I'm bringing that up now. Again, this is from last time. So in our player controller script, we say something like the following. Yes, we're going to get input from our general input, and then what we're going to do with the input is we are going to, whenever this thing lets me do stuff, yeah, let's bring in Resharper. So when we're moving towards the, thank you, Resharper. When we're moving towards the right, I'm multiplying it by move force. When we're moving towards the left, I'm multiplying it by move force. This is good. But I'm adding force with no cap. I do not have a velocity cap. So I want to create some kind of maximum speed, if you will, or maximum velocity. So I'm going to do that down here. I'm going to kind of say public, it's going to be a float, And I want to talk about maximum velocity. That's what it's going to be called, maximum velocity. There it is. And I want to set it to a certain value. By default, let's set the value of our maximum velocity to something like, I don't know, 15. Now, remember that move force is different than jump force. And maybe what we want to do is we want to do maximum upwards velocity, or x velocity, and maximum velocity on the down, right? Or to the right and left. So this, instead of making it a float, this is neat, but wouldn't it be better if I made it a vector? Because we have two. We have x and y. X velocity, y velocity. So if that's true, we can make this a vector 2. Maximum velocity across different things would mean this would have to be a new vector 2 object. And the new vector 2 object would have maximums in here. So let's set the maximum across the x-axis to 20, and the maximum across the y-axis to 30. By the way, this is way off, but I want to bring it in there because we want to talk about it. That's why I'm making it this big. It should be like less than half of these in some cases. But let's see what happens when I make it like this. What does it look like on the inspector? When I make a vector, when I put a vector on the inspector, it kind of looks like this. If I go to the player, you can see now that the player controller has something called maximum velocity, and it becomes this XY thing, which is kind of cool. You can see it, 20 and 30. So I want to go down here and I want to cap it, and I want to say, okay, cool, great, you're on the horizontal and I'm moving to the right, but I want my maximum velocity to be X and Y capped, whatever that's going to be. Now if I did it just for here, as an example, then I'd have to do it again for here and again for here. So I don't want to do it just for these ones. I want to do it for all of them. When I'm moving, I want there to be a maximum velocity for movement. So I'm going to go down. And just like I did before, I want to say that the rigid body, and it's the player rigid body, or hero rigid body dot velocity. So again, this is the accumulated speed, if you will, with a direction. All right, maximum velocity is going to be equal to, again, it's got to be a new vector 2, because notice that velocity is a vector 2 object. So it's going to be a new vector 2 object. It's going to have two parts. I'm just going to split it over two lines here. The first part is going to be clamped to have a range. So I want to have a range on the x-axis, a positive maximum velocity and a negative maximum velocity. Why? Because I want to be able to travel both ways, right? Same thing with the y-axis. I want to go up and down. So it's going to be maximums on the positive and negative, right? So I want to say that we can use the math function, math f dot clamp. And what clamp does is you give it a value, like the current velocity, hero rigid body dot velocity. But we only care about, in this case, the x velocity, the velocity across the x-axis. And we want to clamp it between a negative number, negative maximum velocity on the x-axis, and maximum velocity on the x-axis. Does that make sense? So I'm actually clamping it between these two values. I'm saying, okay, well, I'm clamping my x-axis, and I'm clamping it between a negative value for the maximum velocity and the positive value for maximum velocity. So example, between negative 20 and 20. Okay, for now. Next, let's do the next one. I need to do the same thing, but instead of the x value, we're going to do the y value. All right, so we're going to put that in there, and we're going to say that this is y, this is y, and this is y. and we don't need an extra comma. So it kind of looks like this. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's split over a couple lines, but basically what it is like this. It says like, okay, I want to clamp my velocity. I want to create a new vector 2, and I want to use math f clamp. Clamp, again, it limits a value. I get a value. It could be 500. If my velocity became 500, I want to say, whoa, take that 500 now and reduce it to the maximum, inside that range. I don't want you to go beyond one or the other. And what clamp does is it doesn't interpolate. It doesn't remap the velocity. So if I had 500, 500 doesn't mean 20, and 490 doesn't mean 18. It doesn't do that. It just says, wait, you're over 20, that means you're 20. We cut off all the other numbers. We don't care about anything greater than 20. Greater than 20, we're discarding. We only care about this value. You've gone to that value, great. Now all I care about is that. That's how clamping works. So this will clamp our x and y velocities, and what we'll do is we'll create a new vector 2 that we will assign to our velocity, so we will limit ourselves between a certain range. Okay, and this is going to happen every frame. So every frame that this runs, every time we move, we're going to limit ourselves to this velocity range. Now I'll tell you that there's no limit here. Like 20 and 30 is like crazy, right? And let me show you what that means. You'll see no difference at this point. We need to limit it until you see a difference. So again, going back, you can see when I did this, I have a range of 20 to 30, and if I run it, and if I run my my thing, still I get the same thing going on here. Let me just maximize this. You can see there's no difference right now. If I go next to here, you can see that still I'm way up there, right? Why? Because 20 and 30. So let's unmaximize, and let's change these values. This is the advantage of using the editor. The editor is really useful if it's used right. And one of the ways we can make it useful is reducing these numbers. So we know that 30 is way too much. Let's try something different, like maybe 12. All right, and let's reduce the maximum velocity on the x-axis to maybe 10. And let's see how that works. So again, going back to here, let's maximize so we can test that out. That theory is 12, 10 and 12. So you can see now that I'm not accelerating anymore. Look, I've reached my maximum velocity, and I'm going to have a constant rate of speed. See that? I'm not accelerating. I accelerate up to the limit, but I can't go beyond 10. Same thing goes here. Watch. Even if I double jump, I can't. Even if I want to. It's limiting me to that positive velocity. I'll never go beyond that anymore, which fixes our problem. Okay? So then if I run, I can run pretty quick, but it's not going to do anything. Make sense? So questions around clamping. I know clamping is a weird thing. If you're not really great with math, you're like, how does that work? Well, I mean, literally all it does is like, it takes two numbers, set the fences. You're almost like setting these two fences. And then your number range can kind of run between those two fences, the lower fence and the upper fence. And basically, if you're between those two fences in terms of numbers, you can have whatever number you want. But beyond those numbers, they get truncated and cut off. All right, so that's the first part. So let's save that. But I'm really unhappy with this. This is like a really crappy little tile map. Let's see if we can use something else. So what we're going to do is, and here's the tile map. I can actually turn the tile map renderer off, so I don't have to render certain things, which is great, right? Also notice this. My transform, my tile map is actually a transform, right? So it has a transform. It's a game object, which means, well, I can move it around, right? Which means scrolling and all that stuff is the same as if I was scrolling the ocean, like on our example for Mail Pilot, right? We can do that. We can scroll a tile map around if we need to, right? Or we can move the camera, however you want to do it. All right, so that's the first part. Second part. So if I make this, let's make this invisible. I want to make another tile map, and we'll call this tile map background. Okay, so I'll make a new tile map. Again, we're going to go 2D object, tile map, And we'll just rename this the background. It's not really the background, but we'll make it kind of the background. Great, there it is. Again, notice a couple things. The foreground and the background are identical in terms of their setup. It's still using the same grid. So the grid is not going to change. However, this is where we get into some trouble. The background is going to have a different scale than the other one did. Okay? Let's make a new one. So I'm going to say create new tile palette. Just like over here. Like we made the first one, I'm going to go here and say create new tile palette. Yay. Let's call this, again, based on our tiles. You can see that it's called blocks 1 and blocks 2. We'll just call it blocks 1 and blocks 2. So again, we'll go new tile palette, blocks 1. We'll make it rectangular. It's automatic cell size. Press create. We're going to still point at tile maps for the tile palette, right? And might as well create the other one too. So we have blocks 1, and we'll also make a new tile palette. We'll call it blocks 2, and we'll create that one too. Same place. So again, assets, tile maps. Here we go. We did both at once. Let's go back to blocks 1. Notice it says blocks 1 belongs to the active tile map background. Yeah. Or I can choose foreground. I can choose whichever tile map I want this tile palette to apply to. Okay? So let's go back. We're looking at background. And I want to take my blocks. Now my blocks, if you look at block 1, it's not cut up. See this? Remember what we did last time. We clicked on blocks. It takes us to this, to the sprite itself. We want to change it from single to multiple. And then we want to go into our Sprite Editor and cut it up. So we'll go into my Sprite Editor, apply, and oh man, what the heck is this? Now we got some other problems. One of the problems is you get this big border, and the border is like pretty thick. It looks like a couple of pixels wide, right? So this is not the greatest tile set, all right? If it was the better tile set, you wouldn't have any border, it'd be all black, right? And then, or transparent in the background, and you wouldn't care about this stuff. So this is an issue, just pointing it out, right? So that's one thing. So we can do slicing. We can go to slice, and instead of automatic slicing, where we kind of try and automatic, if I click automatic slicing and click slice, doesn't know what to do, right? Because it's not like you have a persistent number of blocks. It doesn't know how to figure things out. In fact, it made just one big one. That's no good. So let's go back to slice. So I'm going to go back to slice, and instead of automatic, what we can do is we can choose grid by cell size, and we know it's not 64 by 64. In fact, I know it's probably about half that size, 32 by 32. So let's do that, 32 by 32. And we know there's a bit of padding and offset. Let's add our padding and offset to 2 each. And then press slice. Now that looks pretty good. See? It sliced and it ignored the border. I'll have to tell you, I'm not totally happy with this either because it's not quite accurate, as you're going to see. Also, we have some real issues. Remember that it's going to create a block like this for this. But that is going to mess us up, right? If we put that block next to the other one, we're going to expect a little bump, but we're going to get a big bump. We're going to get this. So the character is going to stand up here. How do you fix this? Well, first let's apply what we have, which cuts everything up. Okay. Next, what we need to do is instead of Sprite Editor, we're going to change this to Custom Physics Shape. And what it does is it allows us to click on the actual sprite. So again, each of these is a sprite, right? Each one of these things, right? So notice that this is what we want to do. So notice that if I choose one or the other one, you can't see it, but it's actually selecting these. So let's select the ones that make the most sense. Let's select the first one. So it's kind of hard to see because of my selection. I want to select this one. And then what I can do is I can click on Generate. What Generate does is it generates the physics shape. So notice I have this little margin. Well, I can pull these down here. So I can make it so that it's only like that. What physics shape does is when I plop it, when I physically draw it on the screen, my collider changes. It doesn't change, it doesn't do the entire block, but only the stuff I want. Let's try it again. So over here, click on this one, and then click Generate. Again, I'm on Custom Physics Shape, and then click Generate. What it does, again, is it creates my little rectangle, or rectangle, and I want to just do one of these. There we go. And the same thing goes with this weird one, right? This one's kind of like a ramp. That's a weird thing, right? So again, I click on this one, Generate. Now this one, what you can do is you can add additional. If I double click, I have another control area that I can do, and I can kind of do one of these. Right now, you got to be very careful because these will tile, and you got to be careful how they tile together. Right, so you can see now I've got a bit of a ramp. All right, same thing goes with these ones. So again, click on this one, Generate, bring this down to here, bring this one down to here, and this one across. Same thing with this one. You can see that there's a lot of work to be done, right? Still, however, there are advantages. Once you fix up your tile set, guys, I can't tell you how awesome it is to have a tile set like this, where, well, maybe not this one, but other ones like this, but maybe better, that allow you to create custom colliders for every shape. You can also do custom animations, which is very interesting, because you can shift between two different tile states. We're going to do more tile work next week, but I wanted to kind of introduce you to the concept of it this week. You can see what I'm doing here. Now if I don't do this, what I'm doing, and let me do one that's a little trickier, like this one. Here's a trickier one, right? You can see that this is the corner of a platform. So if I click on this one and Generate, it's not really going to cut it. So I got to kind of double click, and then double click again. And what I want to do is maybe even double click one more time, so I can generate the rough shape of this thing without compromising too much of a mesh renderer. This creates a mesh renderer for you, but you can see what it does, right? It's very accurate, but unfortunately takes construction time. So for your artists wherever you are out there, this is for you to do, not a programmer to. Or if you're a technical artist, that's great too, but it's something where you're going to have to consider that there are things for you to prepare when it comes to your tile map, if indeed you choose to do so, like to use a tile map. I recommend it because it's going to save you time, and it's going to make your 2D games look awesome. It doesn't matter, by the way, if you're using a 2D, if you're making a 2D game that is a platformer or a side scroller. Tile maps are pretty awesome because they can make your background look incredible, like really active and everything else, right? All right, so good. So I've got this happening. I could do them all, but I'm going to stop because I'd have to do a lot more, and it takes time to do all this stuff, this work, and I'm not going to do that. Once I've done the ones I want to change, and let me see if there's any other ramps on this one, and I don't see one except for this one. This is kind of the only weird one we had, right? And the rest were all kind of blocky. The clouds are weird too. Here's something to also think about this, right? If I make the clouds collidable, it means you can jump on the clouds, right? And you got to be considered. Sometimes what we want to do is instead of taking the entire tile map, the entire tile set, and applying it to one tile map, we can also break it up between stuff that you will not collide with in the background and stuff that you will collide with in the foreground. It's actually taking some of this stuff and breaking it up. And let me show you how that's done. So first, I want to apply. Next, once we have the blocks one that's separated, like this, I want to bring it into blocks. Now there's two ways to do that. I can drag and drop, like I showed you earlier, or if I go to the blocks, I can individually put a block in there. Okay, so you can do individual ones as well as the entire blocks, the entire tile set. I recommend the entire tile set, but sometimes you need to do it separate because there might be something that you want only to be collidable compared to the other ones. Let's bring in the entire block set. Alright, so it's going to ask me where do I want it. Again, it's going to be up into tile maps. We're going to call this blocks 1 in a new folder. I want to kind of segregate it a little bit. So blocks 1. Double click there and click select folder, and then it's going to convert all the assets into something that I can paint with. That's what it does, really, at the end of the day. It's really simple, and I really like it. Okay, cool. So, but now we have another problem. So here's our grid, and I'm just going to take a block, the ones we just kind of made. So this one, say take this block and man, is that right? Holy crap, that's like really small. Okay, undo. Why is that? Because I'm painting on the background. Foreground's been disabled, it's off. Background's on, but it's showing a tile that's really small. Why? The tile is already small, right? So I need to scale this up. Now there's a couple ways to do that. We can scale up the foreground and scale down the background, or we can do it the other way around. But we need to do it somehow. Now there's other ways to do this, but I find this way is the easiest to understand. So if I go to 4 size, you can see that that doesn't really do it. See? If I went 4 by 4, it just makes this one big and the background wham, right? Like really massive. It's like this tile itself is small, right? That's the issue. So let me undo those changes. How about the blocks? Blocks right now, in terms of pixels per unit, they're 100 to 1. So the other way I could have done it is I could have made this like 50 to 1, right? So I could have done that. I could say like 50 to 1. And if I did that now, you can see that these grow, which is awesome that it does it automatically. Again, I'm really happy with that because in the past, you didn't have that kind of control. Click on the block, and now you can see that it's a bit better. Still way, way far away. I'm putting it out there, guys, right? So maybe 50 to 1 is too much. Let's try 25 to 1. Apply. Which makes this nice and big. And by the way, I got to be careful because I don't want to set the scale here any different than this one as much as possible, right? So again, you can see that that is almost right, but not quite right, right? This is 50 to 1. I need to make it even bigger if I want to match the same scale as the other blocks that I had, right? And again, this is the other way to do it. So, that seems to be really off, right? So, again, we're at 25 to 1. What's the next number that I should go to? 5? 16? I like your thinking. So if I made it 16 to 1, 16 times, right? And if I click apply, they become bigger. Now it's perfect. So what we want to do is we want to do these ones. And I want to test it out. Actually, let's just do, this one. Notice I can just like draw over the ones I already have, right? So how about this one? There we go. And you can see that you can vary the way it looks. And I can modify both. I can take these two. And then what you can do is, I want to take a copy of what I just did. So what you can do is I can move those around like I did last time. So if I was going to set up a platform, if I know this is my platform somehow or whatever, I could start off with these and then have some kind of middle, these two that are repeating, and then these two at the end. So I could do something like this. I could say that, okay, so these ones are the beginning, right? So let's make a larger platform, like over here. So he's going to jump over here. That's the beginning. And then I'll take these ones in the middle, and I'll kind of draw those a bunch of times. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Much longer platform, let's say. And then I'll just grab the last part. So just like you normally would do with these ones, and then so you have like that whole thing. Now, one thing to note is that my game is kind of blue and I have a black background. So what might help me in this case for these blocks is to make my camera, instead of it looking at a blue background, make it look at a black background. So it looks like it's all one. Okay? Not always the solution. Yeah, so what I need to do, here's my background, is make sure that my layer is ground. So all these are grounded. I also want to add, like I said before, I'm just doing it again so you can see it, a tile map collider. So I've done that. And now we should see the same kind of control that we did before. Now you can see how crappy these tiles are too, because you can see the separations. Alright? However, all that being said, right? The great thing about this is that you can see them from a testing perspective. It's good too. So we can see that they're okay. You're going to obviously pick a better tile set than me, but you can see now it's limited. I'm not going to accelerate forever, and let's see what happens when what happens there. Look at this. I can't seem to. I can go here and look. That's not what I expected, guys. I expected me to fall off here because I made another kind of collider. So this doesn't look right. Well, what do you mean? You mean I have another one back here? Yeah, this one. So this foreground is very interesting. Even though I've turned off the renderer, my actual foreground is on. Let's just turn off the whole thing. And let's just run this again. Let's not be crazy. So what I'm expecting to do is that. See that? That is what I expected to do. And that's perfect. That is exactly what the tile should do when you put on that kind of collider. So it's like, hey, right? So it looks like it's the same shape as the platform, right? Same thing over here. Oh, okay. You're not going to survive past that time. Whoa! I made it. I did a double jump, right? I did a double jump because, right? I went like this. I went boom. And you can see how I slid. Still too fast, I find, eh? Maybe his speed is way too fast still. Let's modify this. So again, I'm going to go back to his player behavior. Oh yeah, they went back to normal again. So this should be like we said, like something like 10 and 12 max. That's why it's happening the way it's going, right? So let's save that. And let's run it again. And let's maximize it by going here, maximize. Yeah, that's better. That's okay. Now my camera can keep up with them, right? Before my camera couldn't. See? Pretty good? But notice this. This is the great thing. So he's like, whoa, it's going to fall. He's got a ramp, and I like that. Similar when it comes to this other stuff. Remember, our tile set also includes this weird thing, right? And what happens when I kind of put that in there thing? Right? Like, if I go here, like, can I make it so that there's some kind of weird, I don't know, thing like this? And this is kind of weird because, you know, I'm kind of making it so that there's a slide that looks like this, and I have no idea if it's going to work, right? Let's see what happens when I do this. Like, does he slide all the way down? Like, what happens? So again, let's maximize. And, oh no, I fell. Respawn. I lost a life, but I made it there. And now I get to this point. I'm just going slow because I get to this. I can probably land here. So I kind of survive. Then, right? Not bad, right? And even with this crappy tile set that I got, I mean, it's pretty good in terms of what you can do. And again, one thing to note is, can I go back up? Can I go back up? And this is where we're going to have a problem with this one. I can slide down because of gravity, and I can do one of these. I can kind of jump all the way up, but I can't really go up a ramp, which is kind of weird, right? Why is that? Well, it's because of this. Because what happens is, this guy has a rigid body, and what we've done with him is we said, hey, rigid body, let's clamp you across the z-axis rotation, right? Now, if I take that off, it's going to really look odd, right? Watch. Right, he's going to run around, and then he's going to slide off here and fall into oblivion. That kind of looks weird. It's going to look, you know, kind of, he's enjoying a nice lie down, right? Hey, swimming, right? What do you think, Josh? You think this is good? He's just like, you know.
No, I think you gotta fix your rotation by freezing it on your rigid body so you don't go sideways like that.
We just had that. And what I'm saying is, if I unfroze it, then we get, like kind of a weird thing where he's doing backflip in his face. He's doing a face plant the whole time. And then we can kind of, do this, and he can rotate until that point where he can run away. So it's kind of weird, but it's not right. So this is where, you know, that's why we added in this freeze rotation on the z-axis. But you're going to see with another tile set that we're not going to have an ability to go up a ramp as easily. And we got to think about how to tackle that one, right? So this is kind of the stuff we're doing. So again, not the greatest tile set, but you can see how it works. In terms of this, makes it kind of interesting the way it worked out. Let's try tile set number 2. So blocks 2, we'll do one more time. Again, I'm repeating myself, so you've seen it a few times in different kind of tiles. One is, I want to put it in the, you know, the background, like we'll call it the super background. All right. So again, we'll make another tile. We'll go in here and go 2D object, tile map, and we'll call this tile map like the super background. Sure. And this one, and here's something we can do. Our foreground, our background, and our super background all have an order and layer of 0. So imagine if I want to do like parallax scrolling, right? I can go super background will be 0. The background will be 1. And the foreground will be 2. So 2 is way up here. And that means our player is going to run around only in the foreground, and his order and layer is also going to be 2, right? Because we want him to be in the same layer as everything else. So the other stuff in the background is going to be further back, kind of thing. Now it's going to make it a little weird. So if I ran this guy the way it is right now, I don't have a super background tile, but what I do have is he's actually in front of everything, right? So you can see that when he slides off, it kind of looks a little different. See? Just making sure you understand what's happening here. Oh, I didn't quite make it. Hey. That's okay. That works okay. Now when it comes to this part, this is where you might notice some other changes. Or not. Alright, there we go. So yeah, we got the background. Let's just turn it off for now, and let's put the super background on, which is going to be yet another one of these. Again, what we talked about is blocks 2. So I've got blocks 1, and I've got blocks 2, and I want to take blocks 2. I want to cut it up, right, just like we did before. I want to go from single. I want to go to multiple. Now, we mentioned 16 as the right number. We did this last time, so we're going to go 16 to 1 in terms of pixel size. So very simple. Apply. Then we're going to edit the blocks. Here they are in their glory. We're going to go to slice. Instead of automatic, we're going to go to grid by cell size. And we know that they're 32 by 32 with a spacer of 2 between everything. If I click slice, you can see now that they're all properly sliced up. This is nice. But we're going to have some issues. The same issues we had before. For example, this weird tree shape. That is a weird tree shape, right? We cannot have a collider that looks like this properly, right? So instead of doing it, accepting what this is, we can go in from Sprite Editor, we can go back to Custom Physics Shape, apply, and then click on the area that we want to modify, so this one, and then go Generate. And what this does is it's going to make another shape. If I double click on the line, I create another control handle. So again, you can see that this is pretty cool. And it doesn't have to be fully accurate, but you know, if you really want to, you can. It's like not bad. And you can do the same thing for this one. You can kind of click on this one, generate, pull this one down here. Double click on this control handle. It doesn't matter where you double click, you can move it around. That's the beauty about this thing. And you know, you can be as accurate, I guess, as you want. Just don't go too crazy because this is like a mesh shape. And a mesh shape, you know, it takes more calculations than anything else. Alright, so there we got a couple of them, and there's more. We can probably add more. The branch, which is interesting, this part here. So this is a square, this is a square, but these ones, you could definitely make a custom physics shape. So again, here, generate, and then you can see that I would probably pull this down here, and kind of like this here. And then if you really want to, I mean, chances are no one's going to go and do this. They're not going to hit their heads. But where you really want to be careful of is the top. So that's why I'm zooming in here. So you can sit there and say, well, even though the shape of this thing is fairly square on the top, we don't want him to float above the branch. So that's why we're going to create a custom physics shape. So again, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to bring this down here. We're going to bring this down here. It can be kind of fun. It takes time though. And we can see that this one is easier because it's pretty much a rectangle, but only on part of the tile as opposed to the whole tile. It's not bad. We'll do a couple more and then we'll stop, just because I want to show you the tree and what it can do for us. Now this is if you want to make the tree collidable at all. What if it's just a background? Who cares? We don't have to do any of this work. If it's a background, well, it doesn't have to be collided with at all, which is perfectly fine. Alright, so we did a few of them. I'm not going to do them all, but you get the picture. Okay? I'm going to click Apply now, which is going to generate the shape for us. And then I'm going to close this off. And I'm going to take these blocks, I'm going to pull them into here. And again, just like we did last time, I went to Tile Maps, and I'm going to make a new folder called Blocks 2, just to keep organized. And under Blocks 2, which this is what it's called, select folder. It's going to take these shapes, these assets, generate related assets to the sprite sheet, which is good, right? And put these in here. Yay. And again, notice the background, I didn't make a change in scale. Super background, again, no change in scale. But now what we can do is we can take this tree and let's put the background back on. So let's put the background on. Here's the background. And I want to take this tree right here and I want to start drawing this weird tree in the background. Why not? So again, what you can do is you can take this little dropper and you can select this whole shape. So you can put it wherever you want. And depending on how you want the tree to look, let's say for example you want it to be here, and you want this other part down here to be in the bottom, you can do that. You can kind of select this part, and we can put this in the bottom just to create a background. And we can take these last two items here and draw them out. And this what this will look like is something like this, right? So where the player, again, crappy tile set, so be aware that I'm not proud of this one, but it is what it is. But it gives us a chance to understand what the grid looks like, which is what I like. So notice that he goes in front of the tree shape because tree shape is not a collider, right? However, there's nothing wrong with making this part something he can jump onto, right? Which means we can take these two pieces, put them on a separate palette, separate tile map, which is another layer that has collisions, right? But it's behind this guy. So when he's traveling around down here, well, there's no collision down here. The only collision is the top part of this tree, so he can kind of pass over it. But when he lands, but he can land on top of it. That kind of thing. Okay. So kind of neat. He's passing through it, and you can see it's flickering because we're moving through it. But it looks like it's going to fall off into oblivion. One thing that is a little fooling for us, it fools us, is this. Like you expect him to fall onto the branch, and he doesn't. So be careful how you align your stuff. I mean, it can be fooling, kind of fool your player a little bit, and that can be very annoying. Especially if he doesn't know how to double jump or wall jump like I need to do right now because of my clamping, right? And there you go. Questions around tile maps and what you can do. I mean, sky's the limit, guys. Like in terms of your creativity, how you layer them together, all that kind of stuff, how you move things around. If you know you're going to make certain tiles like this palm tree, as an example, you want to make this palm tree in the background, you literally could connect all these. You could say, well, I want this one, so this one, top of these ones, and then maybe you're going to make it so that they're 2 tiles high, so maybe something like this, and then we'll make another one over here, and then you can take the other 2 and then draw them in there. So to create an interesting background. And if you were going to run it like this, I mean, literally, it just stays on the background. You think you can jump there, but you can't. I even fooled myself just now. And you can see that you can have your tiles run around in a certain place. The what? Classic Sonic, sure. Oh, he made it somehow. He slipped down, and he's going to fall into oblivion. All right, so are we good? So again, it becomes more interesting. You can make your backgrounds pretty awesome. Some people paint the entire background a certain thing with a bunch of tiles, and they can layer it in the background, like another color with some kind of interesting pattern, which looks like a sunset or whatever. There's a lot of tile sets. One thing I should mention is that there are some free assets on the asset store that you can grab. One of the ones I was using earlier, which is a totally different tile set altogether, is something called Sunny Land. Let's get that one. So I'm going to go to Asset Store, and I'm going to look for a tile set called Sunny Land. Why don't you do that with me? So here I'm going to search. I'm going to go Sunny Land, and you can see that I've got these different assets. So it looks kind of like this. Sunnyland is free. And what I can do is I can import it. Now I recommend, if you're going to get an asset, a tile, kind of assets like this, you put them in their own folder. And I'll show you this in a second. So import. Great. By the way, this was a recommendation from one of the students in the first section, so it's kind of cool. So we're going to get the assets for this. So the assets look like this. This is what they look like. Very retro, right? So let's take a look at that one. So now I've got 3 pallets. Let's make a 4th one. So I'm going to make a 4th pallet, create a new pallet. We're going to call it the Sunnyland pallet. Sunnyland. Okay? It's the Sunnyland pallet. Create. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go back to assets. We're going to go look at tile maps. And we're going to make a new folder, or actually we'll put it there. Sunnyland. There we go. One thing to note is that when we imported this stuff, so I'm going to go back to my game, my scene. We imported this stuff. We imported Sunnyland in its own folder. I'm against this kind of stuff. I think you should take things like you've imported and put them in their own folder. I'm going to put this in something called imported assets. So it's not my asset. I know it belongs to somebody else. And then also sometimes I want to put it there because maybe I want to erase it and make maybe it's a placeholder for a game that I'm going to make in the future. So here we are. Here's standard. Here's my Sunnyland. And under Sunnyland, we can go to artwork. Under artwork, there's environment. Under environment, there's tile set sliced. There's also back. So what back is, if I was to Sprite Editor, it looks like this, like a background. Sunnyland. So I got a whole big background. So what can I do with this one? Well, I mean, it's pretty massive. So what I could do is like take it as is and then tile it. Because look, this is kind of a tileable background. Take a look at this. So this whole thing could be like a tileable background, right? So I could like literally stamp that whole thing over and over again in my entire level. So it looks like these clouds are rolling the entire way. And so that's definitely one thing I can do. There's also middle. So they actually have some of this. Here's what the middle looks like. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. But hey, we're over. So this is what middle looks like. We got this little thing that kind of looks like the middle part, which is this. It's one big tile that kind of looks, it's kind of in the front of the back. So you get the background, you get the middle, and then you got your tile set sliced. And your tile set sliced looks like this. Now here's where the tile set is a little better, this one. And let's explain here. So one, the background, see this checker pattern? This checker pattern means transparent. So there is no background. Here we have a background, but it's black. Not really happy about it, but at least we have one that's not. This one might be good in a cave. This one might be good outside, right? However, we still have problems with this. This would not make a good ramp. So let's fix it by checking from Sprite Editor, let's go to Custom Physics Shape, and let's see what happens when we generate. Well, it kind of did some of it for us. Take a look. It kind of did one of these. Now we want to be careful because these two things tile together this time. So what I want to do is I want to move this control handle down to right where it's going to be. This control handle across to where this is going to be. But we got to consider that these two things might come together at some point. These two. So that means that this control handle for this one has to be a little lower. So again, I'm going to go to Generate. I'm going to move the control handle down. I want it to match with the other one. See how that one finishes and the other one begins. I want to take this one, put it down here, let's say, and this one down here. And you can see that that isn't totally terrible. All right, so now we've got our physics shape, and it creates a ramp, kind of. And let's see the one more. Let's do this one as well. So here we'll make a generate, and we can bring it kind of down to this. I like to zoom in because then you can actually see what's going on. Like obviously this one's kind of like a little bit of a got a little bit of a bump. If you really want to, you could definitely make this a rough shape because it looks rougher. But maybe you don't want to do it in this case. Maybe you want to make it so that they can climb a ramp. Wow, there's a lot of those. There, so I did two. Alright, and then we're going to click apply. The rest will leave for you. You can look at these ones. Like obviously, You want to do the same thing here for these little outcroppings, right? You don't want to make it so that this is a whole block. That would be very bad, right? So you can make it so that they're a little bit more interesting. Okay? Alright, so now that I have them sliced, I want to pull them into here. This is called tile set sliced, but that's okay. We're pulling it into Sunny Lands. I'm going to go into the right folder again. I'm trying to keep organized. So this is Sunny Lands. Sunny Land. And inside Sunnyland, I'm going to select my folder. I'm going to parse all these assets. There's 128 of them. And now we're going to have the other problem again. Is this the right size? And the answer is hell no. It's not the right size. It is not the right size at all. Right? Why? Because tile slice is 100 to 1. Let's bring it right down to 16 again. And let's see if that is the right size. It might even be, that might be too small. See? Let's go even smaller, like to 8. Yeah. So that's pretty good. So 8 looks like it's the right size. And again, one thing we didn't talk about is in our grid we have Sunny Lands. We don't have a background for this Sunny Land stuff. We could put it part of the background if we really want to, or we can put it inside the super background, wherever we want. Right now it's going on the background. So we could, let's just tile over these ones just to see what it looks like. So we'll keep these ones here in the super background, but in the background we'll tile the new ones. So again, notice where it says active tile map. You can choose whichever one you want. I'm going to go into just background. I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to zoom out here so we can see these things. Now there's 3 tiles that are the same. Notice they're the different edges. So it would be like this, and like this, and these ones would be in the middle. Oops. Guess that's kind of what it would look like. And then what you could do is you can create these areas here that are below it, right? If you really wanted to. And then same thing, let's replace these ones with my new ones, right? So grab this one here and all these there. Okay, and this part. Keep this bottom part the same, why not? But one thing I want to do, actually let's erase that part. So see, erasing is easy, right? Isn't that nicer than vertical snapping? V-snap on vertex snapping on every single tile. It's crazy, right? By the way, you can still do that. If you have something that's going to have a rigid body or fall or something like some kind of crate or some other kind of item, you still want to do those things. But for the background, for the actual map itself, the level, you could certainly do this way, and it might work better. Okay, now I want to make that ramp. Remember with the ramp created, let's create this ramp. So I want to kind of select all these. There. 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 And then let's make this same thing happen again, where I take this part over here and a bunch of these, and then this one, and let's make the ramp go down. So we will do one of these. So there, 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 and then we'll ramp it off like this. And again, if you really want to, you can kind of add to it. Like maybe what you want to do is you want to create an area there that is whatever. And you can add to it over here, like almost like a little area that you can't dig to or whatever. So you can paint the area that is hanging down. You can even go so far as to kind of collect it inside and whatever else you want. Okay? Maybe even add some, I don't know. Alright, so yay, let's try it and see what it looks like. So he's still there. Notice that I didn't have to make the colliders again because, oops, do that again. I meant to do this one. Because they've already been made. The colliders, they're kind of done as you draw. Let's try if we can make this now. Ooh, there we go. You can see that this is cool. I can't go by the bush though because that bush has a collider too. See? Look. That's no good. Got to fix that. That should be part of the background, super background. Alright? And now how about this? Well, he kind of makes it part way, but he doesn't have enough gumption unless he jumps. That's kind of weird. But if he slides down, he can slide all the way down. He just can't go up. So why is that? It's because of the way we do our forces, right? So our forces right now are linear, right? We're getting a linear force that's happening across the x-axis. Whenever we go right or left, when I go right or left, I give energy, on the kind of lateral sides, the x and y, x on the x-axis, on the horizontal. What I need here is I need energy on the horizontal as well as energy up. It gets weird because really what I need to do to make this accurate is take these pieces and put them on another layer altogether. So instead of it being ground, it's going to be a ramp. When I hit the ramp with my character, it knows to change my physics from just going to the right to going diagonally up or diagonally down. And furthermore, I could change some stuff now. I mean, I could try some funky stuff. So let's say, for example, I want to go into, and I could cheat. This is kind of like cheating. So if I go back to my hero controller for a second, my player controller. Right now the way it works is horizontal. You notice that I'm adding force to the left or I'm adding force to the right. That's what I'm doing. And I've got to move force, whatever that is. And it only allows me to do one direction this way. However, I don't have to go left and right. I can make a new vector2 object. So I could say, let's just replace this. I'm just going to comment this out for now to show you what I'm talking about. And let's just copy this back in and show you the difference. So what if, instead of doing right and left, so remember what right does is 1, 0, right? What if I did 1, 1? So a new vector2 object, new vector2, and I did 1, 1. Is that possible? Can I do that? What would that do? I mean, again, that only happens if I am grounded. So I can't move up. I won't be like flying up in the air, chances are, unless I'm grounded. Okay? But let's see what happens now, right? So let's see how funky this looks. Maybe not look right, especially on the way down, what you're going to see. But it's a problem to solve. So now this is going to the left, which means it's got to go just like -1, and then climbing up to the left, -1, 1, right? That's what I really should do. It should be a new vector2. Alright, so that is kind of weird. Top left, top right, and we don't care if it's going down because, do we? I don't know. Let's see what happens. So if I try this out, and this is the good thing about learnings, about like how this all works. So let's run this thing and see how bad it is. So here, no difference, right? We don't notice a difference. It's when we hit the ramp that we start noticing a difference, and both ramps, by the way. So here's okay, but what happens when, oh, that's cool. Everything's good. And then when I come to this, then we're good. Right? But what about this part. See that? This part's okay, but then this part, not so good, right? Now it can almost look natural. It's almost like he jumped for a second. Like he kind of took off and he went woo, and then he kind of jumped. That's not terrible. Not terrible. And you could probably close one eye and be okay with it. But, you know, I would be okay with it if he handed that in. But it's like, you know, in real life, that gameplay might suffer a little bit from that. But the great thing is, able to climb ramps now, no problem. And one thing is, he can still slide all the way down, no problem. I'm not touching the controller, right? But it's not like he's going to, you know, and it's not that he can't jump. He can totally jump. But that's weird. See that? It's almost like he wants to kind of come off there, right? See? It's like, whoa, hey. It's really, see, even that was weird too. Look at that. I didn't even have to jump there. He just did it, right? Because I'm at the edge, right? I'm kind of at the edge. And so here's the question. Am I grounded? Look at this. Look at his feet too. That's kind of a weird thing. His feet kind of aren't grounded. He needs to be a little lower than this. Why? Because remember, we have a different kind of collider, right? His collider is a capsule collider, right? So if we actually look, I'm just talking about issues, right? That's why I want to point these things out to you, so you know. So here's his collider. If I was to look at the player himself, so let's take a look. So let's go into his rigid body, and where's his collider? Oh, no. Here it is. What the heck? What? What's happening there, right? What if I change positions? If I go to the game and change position, then you can see the scene. If I go back to the player, you can see that it's okay here, but then when I turn around the other way, this is a problem, guys. It's a terrible problem. Why? He's flipping across the x-axis, and what's happening is he is physically flipping his texture, but not his collider. So is there a solution to this one? By the way, the answer is yes. There's many solutions. But how can we fix this without using the renderer? Because basically what we're doing at this point, we've created a bit of a easy and difficult problem for ourselves to solve. What I'm saying is it was really easy to flip X on the horizontal, but it didn't solve our collider issue. So what we have is, we can see that our sprite renderer is the thing we're using to hide. By the way, these little underlines is saying, hey, you can make all these private, you don't need to make all these public. And here it says, it's never really assigned, this hero sprite renderer, but actually we do kind of use it. So that's why these are little warnings, but don't worry about it. This is Resharper. And for those people who are looking at this and going, where did you get origin and size? I don't get that. That is coming from a tool called Resharper, which you can get through JetBrains. So if you go to JetBrains Resharper, it's part of Resharper Ultimate, which is right here. And what Resharper Ultimate and Resharper does is it gives you tools to help you do code hinting and refactoring for both C# and C++. Right? So really, really cool things. That's why I get them. I use them for Visual Studio and especially for C++. It's really totally helpful. And as students, you can get it for free. If you look at JetBrains Education. By the way, JetBrains also makes Android Studio, as well as IntelliJ IDEA, C-Line for C++ programming, WebStorm, great editor for doing things with the web, PHP Storm if you want to do PHP stuff, but I don't do PHP stuff because I'd rather use Node. But that's another story altogether. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff that they come up with, and if you look at this free professional developers, free for students, if you click on this, you just have to apply as a student, and if you fill out this form, you can get a free copy of their products as long as you're a student to use and for non-commercial purposes. which I recommend. I think it's some great tools. All right, so again, that's why you're seeing all these extra things, right? So to me, it doesn't bother me. Some people, it bothers them when they see these kinds of marks. One thing to do is little light bulb comes up with some suggestions. So it says fix floating point comparison, right? Floating point comparison. And if I click this button, it actually does it. It creates this thing called tolerance, which we don't have. And it uses math absolute value of this thing to create a less than a particular tolerance. And where tolerance is something that we don't have, I can always go back in here and it says create the local variable tolerance and so on. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to undo that change. It also suggests that I use the inspector a quality comparison of floating point numbers, and so on. This gives me some suggestions on what to do. This is really why I like Resharper, because it gives me some suggestions to improve code. Okay. Anyways, going back. So what I want to do instead of doing this, instead of doing my sprite renderer and flipping it like I'm doing here, where I'm saying, hey, if I'm moving left and right, flip X on the horizontal. Don't do it this way. Instead, change your local scale. So what I mean is, don't do this, but rather do this. Go transform dot local scale, right, is equal to a new vector2 object or vector3 object. And then what you want to do is on the x-axis, if you're flipping, if you're going to the right, you want your local scale to be 1. On your y-axis, you want that to be 1. And you also want your z-axis to be 1. So you're not actually changing anything. You're just making it so it's normalized. However, when you're going the other way, you want, let's just undo these changes. You want this one to be a negative 1. So what you're doing is you're flipping across the x-axis but looking the other way, right? And that's what this does. Let's see how that works. Does it work? And what effect does it have on our project? So again, I'm going to run this thing. Here he is. I'm going to maximize it, and just like we did before, run and then turn left. It looks the same, right? However, there's a change. There is a change that I want you to see. Take a look at this. Take a look at the scene. So if I double click on the player now, here's the player. Let's look at his capsule collider. Ah, that's better, right? His capsule actually flipped too. So now, where he goes, the capsule's going to follow. And we need to use this for the enemy in a second. So let's try this out. Let's go back to the game. And let's see how that affects our movement. So we're going to go here, and then we're going to jump. Right? And then we're going to go up the... That was weird. Ooh, that was really, really weird. Look at that. He almost like flew there for a second. Look. So that's kind of weird, right? I mean, his collider's a little better, especially on the edges. But my issue is this part right here, look. Right? He like flies up there. And same thing on the way down. He's okay on the way down, but when he comes up, flies up there. He's like way up. Now, if you like that kind of thing, if you like it so that he's a speed runner, that's pretty cool, right? And by the way, if you think he's sliding a little bit too much or he's going too fast, maybe he is. I think he's going a little fast myself. Then again, you're going to go back down to your player controller. You're going to go to your player script and move this back down to something like 8. Right? Where now he's going to be cap limited for his velocity at 8 as opposed to 10. Maybe 10 is too much. And, again, you can check that out, but... Whoa! Almost didn't make it there. It's not as bad. I think it still needs to be even slower than this, to be honest. Maybe even 6. let's try it. So again, in game, we can go back to the editor and try 6 without changing it. So we don't have to go and do it again, and then maximize back up, so we can see that that was weird. That was really weird. That was like super weirdo. Like it's like he's floating now. He's like as soon as he comes to this point, it's like, you know, he's like up there. Look. Yeah, it doesn't look as good actually. Actually, 8 looked probably better. So yeah, maybe even 10. So let's leave it at 8 for now. But we have a problem. So what is the other issue? The other issue is that his grounded stuff. His grounded works downwards, but if he's on a ramp, grounded shouldn't be down anymore, right? It's almost like I need to detect when we're on a ramp somehow. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Like I said, one of the easiest ways is to use the tiling system and create a another tile map specifically for ramps. They're on the same you know, kind of layer and order layer. So it's the same layer, it's called ramps. And basically all you do is you put ramps on those things. So when it detects the ramp, each ramp will have its own layer. It's like ground, but now what's going to happen is it's going to change the behavior of your physics, and that's what I recommend. Okay? And that's the easy way. There's other ways, obviously, but this isn't terrible. This isn't terrible. Alright, so we've been going for a bit. I mean, it's we're sitting at 310. We've been going since for about since about 1:30, 1:30, 310. It's about an hour and a half. This is a good place to pause, I think, because we have another 2.5 hours left. Let's take a short break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about how to put enemies in this thing. Okay?